We're good? Okay. Okay, good morning. My name's Gary Matsuoka, and we're here at Laguna Hills Nursery in Santa Ana. It's a Saturday morning, and today's class is my favorite fruit tree, the avocados. So we're in a good climate to grow them. We're not in the best. I mean, best climate's probably Mexico, where they come from, Mexico and Guatemala. However, we can do a pretty good job here, especially with the current weather being the last 3 or 4 years warmer winters than normal, or at least warmer winters than I grew up with. Let's put it that way. I don't know what our normal winter weather is supposed to be, but we are certainly on the warm side the last few years, which helps the avocados. So I brought samples of different avocados. Now, the normal one you buy at the store is Hass, which if you go to the supermarket, you won't see many that look like this, because I was at the store last night and I was buying avocados that look like this. This is not Hass. Hass is dull green that ripens black with pebbly skin. This is smoother. So not all the avocados at the supermarket are Hass. This to me looks like a lamb, but there are quite a few offspring of Hass, descendants of Hass, that they sell as Hass because they look similar. They ripen at different times of the year. Like lamb ripens more towards summer, so this could certainly be a lamb instead of a Hass. We'll go over the varieties as we go on. One of the biggest varieties that is grown locally is Queen, which is good 3-pound fruit. This may be, quote, the biggest avocado that you can grow here, but we ordered some other ones to get big too. Nabal, Reed, also really good avocado. Both of these are in the top 5, I would say. And then we have Don Gilligly, which is a relatively new variety, which is also really good. So we'll be talking about all these a little later, but first we're going to go over how to grow them. Now, probably the most important question we're always asked is pollination. Do they need a pollinator? They don't, but it's helpful to have one. So what they found when they did genetics tests is when they had Hass in an orchard and they put Zutano next to it, which is supposed to be its best pollinator, 89% of the fruit was self-pollinated. The Hass pollinated itself. 11% on average was done by this Zutano crossing with Hass. So that's an 11% increase in production that they found on an orchard basis. Now, they said some years it was 25%, some years it was only 5%, but still you can say 11% more fruit if you have two different avocados next to each other, an A and a B type. Let me tell you what that means. So when avocados bloom, the flowers are really about the size of a BB, less than a 1/4 inch. Well, they might be 1/4 inch in size. And when they first open, so when these flowers first open, they have the petals kind of greenish, creamish petals. When they open, you'll notice that the only thing you'll see is the center stigma or female part. So when they open, they're female. And then they often close after half a day, and then the next time they open, you can still see the female in there, but the male stamens, anthers with the pollen on them, have risen up off the petals. So when they first open, they're flat against the petals. They're not ready yet. And when they open later, they fill most of that space in that flower. So you can tell it's a male flower at that point. The female part is kind of shutting down. And when they first open, it's a female part. So this is a male flower when you see those anthers and the pollen in them. Now, there's two kinds of avocados, but there's probably not really well defined. There's an A type, and then they call it the B type. So the A types are female in the morning, and then they're male in the afternoon. The B types are female in the afternoon and male the next morning. And if you have an A next to a B, it's easier for the pollen from the B to get to the A type than it is from the A type to get to the A type. However, again, they find that 89% of the fruit on the tree was self-pollinated. And what they found out is that any avocado tree doesn't follow this rule strictly. So on one avocado tree that's an A type, most of the flowers are going to be female, but there may be some branches that are male already. They're not purely, they don't do everything in sync like they're supposed to. And they said there's a lot of overlap midday where females are closing down and males are opening up. So the majority of avocados on your tree are self-pollinated. Now, what they do find also is that during the summertime, when we're losing a lot of fruit, so usually the avocados bloom in spring, that's the most common. February to April is most common. And by summer, they're usually about this big. And by fall, they're a lot bigger. But during summer, usually half to 3/4 of them fall off. And what they found is that most of the ones, just about all the ones falling off the tree, were the self-pollinated ones. The ones that hang on are the ones that were cross-pollinated. So those hang on better, but still it's not much of the tree because most of the fruit on there was self-pollinated. So now avocados, compared to other fruit trees, have been relatively bad producers. So if you have an avocado tree that's, say, 10 by 10, you have an orange tree that's 10 by 10, the orange tree is probably making 300 fruit or more. They say 5 cases of fruit for an average orange tree. I don't know how many fruit are in a case, but that's a lot of fruit. So, 300 oranges would be average. Avocados, 110 is the average on Hass. And they say that's a 15-foot by 15-foot tree, 110. A 15-foot orange tree may do 400 fruit. So it's a relatively poor producer. That's why avocados are more expensive. Yes?
What pollinates them? Are they insect pollinated or wind?
Wind can do a little bit. We know that because a lot of people are allergic to avocado pollen, and when you walk, so people who are allergic, they walk by an avocado tree, they just, the pollen's just getting to them. Most of it's bee. So if the bees are on them, you're in good shape. If you don't see any bees on your tree, it's going to be a bad crop. So one of the other problem, so having an A type and a B type next to each other is helpful. Still, so the 3 things that the University of California says most important: number 1, to get fruit, warm temperatures. If it's in the 50s and 60s, if it's in the 40s, 30s at night, 50s and 60s in daytime, the bees aren't coming out. You're in bad shape. So they need the warm temperatures, which we have this year. 2 is the presence of bees. And 3 is having 2 types. So that's 3rd place. So when I first started growing avocados in the late 1980s, every night when my Pinkerton was in bloom, it was 30 degrees at night or colder and 50 degrees in the day. And I got blanked. There was no bees out at that temperature. I thought, boy, Pinkerton, no way you can grow that here. It's just too cold when they're blooming. They bloom January, February, March. And December, January, February. And we were so cold those years, I couldn't get, I got 1 fruit. And I said, well, this is pointless. Now this year is like 80 degrees in December and January, February, there's no problem. So warm temperatures, you need the bees to do most of the work. And the big problem with avocados, they said, is the nectar is not very sweet. So you don't really want a lot of pollinating plants around your avocados when they're blooming. Because they said if you have an orange tree next to your avocado tree and they're blooming at the same time, bees go to the orange tree. Much sweeter nectar. So that's a problem I had in my yard. My last house, I had 5 avocado trees and about 10 citrus trees. And I noticed one year they're blooming all at the same time. It was already June. I'm going out to my avocado trees. No fruit on this one, no fruit on this one, no fruit on this one. It was just horrible. And I had 10 flowers left on one tree. So I started doing a lot of research on the internet, and two different people on the internet said, if you spray your flowers with honey, the bees will prefer them over the citrus. 2 different people. So I had 10 flowers left on my tree. Now, they said normally a Hass tree makes 1 million flowers a year and gets 110 fruit. That's 1 out of 10,000 flowers makes fruit on average on a Hass. I had 10 flowers left. So I got my spritzer bottle and honey. You want good honey, not some of the crappy stuff at the supermarkets. So I got this from a beekeeper, local beekeeper. And you make it 1/4 honey, 3/4 hot water, so it dissolves. So put hot water, fill this up 1/4 honey, add hot water, shake it up really, really good, and spritz the general area of the flowers. It doesn't have to be the exact flower. If the bees smell the honey, they can smell honey from a half mile away. So they're just coming to see what's going on. And then if your flowers are open, they see the landing pattern. So bees see the landing pattern in the flowers and they'll just land on it. Even if it's not sweet, they'll still land on it because they smell the honey. So I did this with 10 flowers on my tree. I got 5 fruit out of 10 flowers. I was just amazed. I thought, there's no way I'm gonna get any fruit on 10 flowers. But the bees were on there all day smelling that honey, and I got 5 fruit out of 10 flowers. That's pretty high amount of fruit per. So people who do this with their tree, they said it looks like cherries or grapes hanging on their tree. Lots of fruits. Now they'll have to drop most of that, but it's better to have too much fruit than nothing. Because I zilched on my other trees that year because of the problem with, the citrus nearby, or if there's, people always say, I want to attract bees to my avocado tree. Let's plant all these plants. I said, don't do it. You want to make your avocado tree the star, not the the worst tasting flower in your yard. Now, if you have an orchard, beehive in your yard, the bees will be on your tree. So I walk through a friend's orchard every morning, and they've got about 20 avocado trees and about 200 citrus there, but they have hives in their orchard. Now this year, the avocados bloom before the citrus, so it was really good this year. I mean, their avocado trees are just loaded without having to spray honey, without doing anything. They are loaded. So if you've got hives nearby, that really helps.
Are you also feeding them like you would with molasses when you do that?
We'll talk about that. So this is to attract bees. Yes.
If you, like, so you said citrus is the flower is very sweet and bees can get it. What happens if you have something else like lavender? I have like 50 lavender bushes all around. The bees are all on those.
Still, honey will draw the bees.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it'll draw them away because they always, if it looks like honey or it smells like honey, they'll go for it. So,
right.
Yeah. Now, the other things that make flowers pollinate and fruits sad and grow is don't feed your trees when they're blooming. So fertilizer. So remember, fertilizer is just a building material. It's not energy. We eat to make us stronger. You give You feed an avocado, you make it weaker. So fertilizer is just to make new leaves. It's not to make flowers. Well, it can make flowers, but it can't make the flowers more energetic, make the fruit set, make the fruit more energetic. The sunlight does that. So on a mature avocado tree, now when avocado trees are young, we just feed them. We want them to grow, get a lot of foliage on them. But when you want them to set fruit, you starve them. So the 2 times a year, when they tested a Hass orchard to see what time of year to fertilize it to make more fruit, it was November. So if you fertilize them in November, you have more material to make more flowers. In June, that's well after the fruit is set, and then you can help make more leaves for the summertime. But if you feed them while they're blooming, that they often sacrifice fruit for making leaves. When they're young, we want the leaves, but as they get older, in fact, they say with older trees, a lot of old trees, no one feeds them anymore. If you just leave the dead leaves underneath them, that's good enough food for an old tree. In nature, that's how plants get their fertilizer. Dead leaves underneath them, pile it up nice and deep. If you don't have enough avocado leaves, cut leaves off someone else's tree or any shrub, any leaf you can get, and make a pile underneath your avocado trees. Make it deep. It keeps the moisture in the ground better. Keeps the soil alive better, fluffier. A lot of benefit to that. I still remember when a friend of mine told me he went down to Guatemala. They wanted to see how deep the leaves were underneath the wild trees. He told me it was 5 feet. They dug through 5 foot of dead leaves underneath some of the wild avocado trees to get to the dirt. That's crazy deep. But he told me that. So I've never been there, so I don't know for certain. So anyway, not too much fertilizer when they're blooming, no fertilizer when they're blooming. Fertilize November and June if your tree needs to keep growing, or if your tree's lacking some foliage. So that's flowering and fruit set. So it's nice to have an A and a B if you have the room. If you don't, the trees are self-fertile. Most of their fruit will form without. But the bees are really important. So an interesting article I read said University of California, Riverside, which their field stations in Irvine, one of the researchers said, I know the bees don't like the fruit. I bet you I can do better. So this guy hand pollinating an avocado tree, he said he got 700. So we know it's a bee problem. The bees don't really like the flowers that much. But if you can get the bees to your tree, your potential may be 700 fruit. If you can get the bees, I'm not going to tell you to sit there with a paintbrush and try hand pollinating 1 million flowers. That's crazy. I don't know. The guy got paid to do this. Yes.
Would hand pollinating be feasible for one tree that's not really self-pollinating? Or
Well,
would that be like totally unnecessary?
Well, you want the bees to do the work, not you.
That's
I mean, I tried hand pollinating that Pinkerton back when it was cold, and that's when I got 1 fruit. So unless you spend a lot of time out there and know what you're doing, then it's probably not that feasible. Okay, now planting wise, you want them in sun. The more sun you have, the more energy they get. I've never had a yard with full sun, so they're always in half a day, 2/3 a day. You do as well as you can. Now they have a reputation of getting, well, avocados among all the orchard trees get root rot the easiest. And they're always blaming bad drainage and water. However, it's not the water, because you can grow an avocado pit in water. That doesn't automatically make root rot. So root rot generally is due to lack of oxygen in the root zone. Now, if the water doesn't move, so if you have a low spot, you got clay dirt, it's a pond there, for month after month after month, the roots will use enough. So plant roots need oxygen. The rest of the tree makes oxygen. The roots themselves need to breathe oxygen that diffuses through your soil. If you got heavy clay and the water's not moving, they'll eventually use up all the oxygen in the water in that clay dirt, and then you might get root rot. Now, the problem we're having nowadays is that I don't know of any avocado grower that grows avocados in the right soil. So back in the 80s, the university told all us nursery guys, you can't grow plants in real dirt. Now, when I was a kid, my plants grew plants, and the whole industry grew plants in sandy dirt. There was no root rot in those days because this doesn't promote root rot. Nowadays, because the university came around in the 80s and told us you can't grow plants in real dirt, you've got to grow them in compost, which is ground up dead trees, because real dirt has no nutrition. And for some reason, that philosophy still exists, and we don't know what happened, because in the 1990s, we found that if we got rid of all the compost, the plants wouldn't rot anymore. But no one else has figured that out. I just don't understand our industry, why they continue to put dead, rotten trees, ground up dead, rotten trees in the root zone, in the container where the plants are trying to grow. Now, in nature, the soil is 1% organic. It's less than 1% organic due to the dead roots. That makes up the organic. But also nature, 5 inches of dead leaves on top of the ground. That's where all the organic material belongs. On top of the ground, it provides nutrition. Underneath the ground, it creates root rot, because if it's decomposing, and anything dead is decomposing, it's lowering the oxygen level around it. And if it's underground, like you go to a landfill, it's creating poisonous gases when you have things decomposing without oxygen underground, killing the roots. Takes away the oxygen, the roots get root rot, makes poison gases, makes the dirt turn black, causes all kinds of trouble. So we do not recommend putting any kind of organic material near the roots of avocados unless that organic material is basically inert. Charcoal's inert. Coconut coir is not too bad. Peat moss is pretty good. Rice hulls are totally inert. So those things, there's no reason to have them there. So you don't have to do it. Plenty of it on top of the ground. That's where nature wants that stuff. But all the avocados we've ever seen at avocado nurseries are grown in compost of some sort, dead stuff of some sort. And a lot of the trees we've gotten from nurseries that grow avocados in compost, you pull them out of the pot, the roots at the bottom are already black, which means they're rotting. They should be cream colored, like that. If they're healthy, they're this color. Now, they can turn black from burning in the pot too. So the other problem we have is if you keep your avocado in a black plastic container and it's 90 degrees out, that soil underneath that black plastic can be well over 100, and that'll just burn the roots up, which can lead to root rot, may not, but it can. Root rot is a disease. If there's no disease present, it just burns and won't rot. But that's still a problem. So you don't want to, so if you have an avocado in a black plastic container, it's nice to shade it if the sun can hit it. This time here now, today is going to be less than 80. It's not a big deal. It'll make it nice and toasty in there, which avocados like warm dirt. So what's interesting is our avocado supplier, when we met them late 90s, they're using white plastic pots. They tried it for a couple years, said, no, got to go back to black. So the problem with white plastic pots for them was that for 8 months of the year, we're too cold. And white plastic doesn't heat up. So their avocado trees were growing really, really slow. So they went back to black, and what they do is in the summer, they just paint the sunny side of the pot white so it doesn't catch the heat then. But for 8 months of the year, we're too cold here. The nights are too cool. You want that soil to be warmer. So we use black plastic. But just be aware that if it's sitting out in full sun now, in the summertime, the leaves on this tree may be covering the pot well enough, but keep an eye on your black plastic containers, because if you can cook up to 40% of the roots if you leave the pot turned one direction. Of course, if you do this, you keep turning it, you burn up all the roots. So in the desert areas, we know the nurseries always put a mark on the north side of the pot because they don't want to burn up all the roots. They always mark the north side. So you keep the north side facing north. You only burn the roots on the south side. So that's one of the rules they use in real hot climates. Mark your north side so you don't burn all the roots up. But still, it's nice to shade them. One way to shade a pot is just slip a 15-gallon side another 15-gallon. And the outer pot will take the heat. There'll be an air gap between the plastic. That won't transfer the heat to the inner one. So that's one way to do it. A lot of nurseries in hot summer climates do pot and pot. They have a bigger pot, a pot inside of it with the plant in it, and that protects it from the heat. So, okay, and they can sunburn. Now, if an avocado tree is healthy, it doesn't sunburn easily. However, there are some exceptions. So when we used to get avocados from another grower, we noticed it hit 90 degrees, the tops of the branches started burning. We thought, boy, that's sensitive. We got to whitewash it, everything. But when we started growing avocados ourselves, nothing. Nothing at all. We didn't see any burning at all. Even when we had 115 degrees, like 5 or 6 years ago, the branches didn't burn. If the tree's healthy, it can take the heat. Now, what did happen on us when it was 115, all the new growth just shriveled up. The new leaves can't take that heat. The old leaves were fine. They didn't burn at all, but the new growth shriveled. Now, that year, when it was 115, we lost like 6 or 8 inches of the tops of all our trees in June or July, whenever it happened. But it's so warm the rest of that year, they grew back in a hurry. We had some huge avocado trees by there because they love 90 degrees. 90, 100 degrees, that's not a big deal for them. You get it much above 110, and that's not their happy spot anymore. But like Michoacan, Mexico, in the middle of December, you can get 90-degree days down there. So that's what they're used to. They like that warm temperature. If they're healthy, they don't burn. But this year we had some real nasty stuff go on in February and March. We hit 90 degrees in the middle of winter, and we're losing a lot of branches, which just was really surprising because it wasn't that hot. So, and we read in our avocado journal. So we have this avocado journal that was written, I don't recall by whom, that was written in the 1960s, and they said they see more branches burning in the winter than any other time of year. So what we're surmising is that in the middle of winter, like October was cooler than normal, November was really cold and wet, December was cool, not real cold, and then suddenly we had this heat in January, February, and March. And all the side branches on this tree from last year burnt off and fell off. And we had quite a few. Now, it wasn't all the right. Like you see this one, nothing happened. But a lot of the avocados related to Gwen. And we know Gwen sunburns easy in the winter. We had heard that. We'd never seen it, but we heard it. And all the branches is burned up and fell off. Now, the wood of the branches extends into the trunk all the way to the roots. So we figure, okay, lost all the branches burned up. This trunk is really unhealthy because all of its pipes are messed up because the branches burned. So you can see this thing's just not doing much at the top here. But the roots are now real healthy. And so we think the cold and being in a container, plus the cold and the wet, killed a lot of the avocado roots. So we know a lot of plants, the roots die in the wintertime and then they regrow in the spring. when the soil warms up again. So this thing got hit by hot temperatures without good roots. So all the branches is fried. And then as the temperatures warmed up, stayed warm in March, all this new growth started. Just really good looking new growth. But the original trunk is just not doing anything. So what I'll probably do on this particular tree, we had another one at our growing ground in Gwen that the trunk died down to about a foot. So it just totally messed up that original trunk. But it grew a lot of new branches like this, so we just took this, cut off the trunk and tied one of the big branches up to the stake. And I'll probably bring that one into the store next month. It'll be hard to tell that it died back because the new trunk is so big and fat already that it looks better than the original. But that's what we think. That's why avocados burn more easily in the winter months, because the roots aren't operating as well, and especially some particular varieties that are not as sturdy as others, like the Gwen and its offspring. This is Gem, which is an offspring of Gwen. So we think that's why they sunburn in winter easier than they do in summer. Of course, in summer too, the foliage is usually full, because in winter, a lot of times the cold will make them drop a lot of leaves, and they don't have enough shade protection. Now,
So Gary, those new branches are above the graft point.
right, they're all above the graft point.
Could you graft something out of the trunk?
Well, I don't know if that trunk is healthy anymore.
You'd have to go way down.
Yeah, so I think most of the, the transport vessels inside that trunk are probably fried too, because they're, the branches that they were made up the trunk. I mean, the trunk is made up of all the tubes from the branches, and the branches are made up, the tubes come from the leaves, so it's just a network like that. So once you lose all your branches, your trunk is probably not very healthy. So
what to do? Just stump them, just cut the trunk?
yeah, now if I had known better, I would have whitewashed it in this last winter.
But it's already like
Right, so it's too late. So just keep the new branches, they're so rubbery, you can just make this branch a straight trunk. I mean, in 10 years, your trunk's gonna be this big, you won't notice that it has a slight dog leg to one side. So, but this is an organic, this company, Ivy Organics, makes an organic whitewash. Before they made the organic whitewashes, we just used white latex paint. So indoor latex paint, water-based paint, a light color. If you paint, the leaves generally don't sunburn. They can get burned tips from not being healthy, but sunburning is usually on a leaf. So if a leaf sunburns, the true sunburn shows up first as a silvery patch or a brown patch between the veins, something like this, because the veins are a little bit stronger and the edge is cooler, so it's not on the edge of the leaf normally, it's kind of in the middle of the leaf. But we rarely see healthy avocado sunburn. Even unhealthy avocados, we don't usually see the sunburning on them. So, but that's how leaves sunburn. You get the brown tips, that's something else. So this whitewash, organic whitewash, if you want to stay organic, this is a powder in here. You mix it with water. You don't have to use the whole can at once. If you add water to the can, pour the powder into the water, it'll do about 5 avocado trees, good sized avocados. But you can just take a little bit of powder, put in a little plastic cup or something, use just a little bit at a time, and just paint the tops of the branches where the sun can hit it, or the trunk if the sun can hit it, and that'll protect from high heat. It'll keep it cooler at least. And you'd have to do it every year. The whitewash kind of falls off as the bark grows.
Sorry, what's that called?
This is Ivy Organic.
Ivy Organic? Okay. Thank you. And is there any differentiation between the two cans of it?
So this is just whitewash. and it's white. And they make other colors for people who don't want white on their trees. They make a light green, a light gray, a light brown. And these also have essential oils in them, which will help keep bugs off for maybe a week or two. It says rodents. My rodents didn't stop when I painted this on them. So
What's the available of latex?
cheaper.
Cheaper. Oh,
This is $40. So latex in the same size container might be what, 10, 12? I'm not a painter, so I don't know what the cost is now for a pint of latex paint. But I'm thinking it's cheaper than that.
yeah.
Okay. Now, this year we ordered 1,300 avocados in containers this big. These are grafted. The grower uses Zutano seeds. So the plant that comes out of Zutano seed isn't Zutano, but it's its daughter or son. They grow it for a few months and then they cut it off right here last summer or fall or winter and graft it on a short branch like this to the tree we ordered. This happens to be a reed. So this short branch here was the reed that they grafted on. This is rubber. It'll just decompose and fall off within a few months. A lot of our trees, it's already fallen off. And we potted these up into the number 5 containers to get some size on them because we don't think this size, especially in the middle of winter, will grow in the ground very fast because the ground's cold. This is warm because it's black. So we put them in here. Now this was planted, I have put dates on March 14th. And you can see it's grown a couple feet. And now we think now this is ready to sell. I have to wait and judge. I wait 3 months at least and see if I think this trunk is strong enough to support the weight of the soil. You know? So you have to be very confident so you can grab the trunk, tap the pot, and the pot falls off and you can put it in the ground. So you can always wait a little bit longer, but just, again, watch the shading on the pot. This is the biggest tree we started this year. And you can see it's about 5 feet. So it was probably about close to 2 feet when we put it in there. So it's grown 3 feet. So that's one of the faster ones. This is the biggest tree I have from last year that I didn't sell. So that's about 6 foot and a lot fatter.
What variety is that?
Nabal. Now we didn't grow that many trees last year, and we sell so many like this now that I have to redo my calculations on how many of these to get, because we ordered 1,300. They sent me 1,200. They had some crop failures on the grafting, and we sold all but 300. So I only have like 300 trees to sell this year, which is 150 less than last year. So I may not get many big ones. We'll probably sell most of them in the 5-gallon size.
We bought a couple of those from you earlier this year when we first got them in. Now, what did you say that the fruit is that the graft is put on?
It's a seed of Zutano. So they plant seeds of Zutano because Zutano avocados have really big seeds, so there's a lot of energy there. Now, one of the other reasons we put them in 5 gallons first, and we recommend to people to put them in 5 gallons first, is because there's a lot of genetic variability between the pits. So the top, if this is a Carmen tree, we know it's going to have Carmen fruit. However, this Zutano pit is genetically they're not the same. So you can have 10 trees on Zutano pits, and every single tree is going to be a little different because of the genetics of the seed make the roots somewhat different. You get different shapes. Now you can also get different shapes. Well, okay, there's 2 factors here. So one of the factors is, where did they get the scion wood from? And they don't track it, so we don't know. But what they found on citrus is if the wood for grafting, if you take it off the top of a mature tree, the resulting tree tends to be slow growing, really bushy, really precocious. Flowers right away. If you take the grafting wood at the bottom of the same tree, that resulting tree tends to be very juvenile, growing fast without fruiting. So that we don't know either. We don't know that. And then the seed itself can have genetics. Sometimes that'll make them just die. Some seeds aren't genetically very good. So like last year with 475 trees potted up, 4 of them died. They looked okay at first and they just slowly died. Some of them still haven't come around to looking good. Now this year, already one of our trees that I potted up real early this year is almost totally leafless. It's dying. So we know the seed has some genetics that we don't know. So, but in general, they say Zutano seeds are quite nice. It's a Mexican variety, which makes it a little more cold hardy than if it was a Guatemalan pit. So we go with that. Now, the industry has developed clonal roots, which in theory would be superior, where they have a clone tree as the root system. But the problem we found is we don't know how to do the cloning part because they have a special root. They have a special avocado tree that makes really strong roots, and I don't have access to that tree. So they have trees called Toro Canyon, Dusa. There's quite a few of them out now. The one that they're allowing us to get, because University of California doesn't want homeowners to have the nicest rootstocks, which are like Dusa and a few others. They were only allowing us to get Toro Canyon, and the problem we saw with Toro Canyon, it makes the trees too vigorous. They grow for 5 years before they fruit. It's like, you don't want a 20-foot tree before it even blossoms. But that's what we were getting out of Toro Canyon. So they said, nah, we don't want Toro Canyon. We'd rather have Dusa, but the University of California won't let us have Dusa. And the other thing that's gone on is that all the nurseries that grow plants bigger than this, like this is in peat and perlite. We think no problem with that. Peat moss doesn't cause future problems, neither does the perlite, unless you have too much, if you have this much peat moss around the tree, the peat moss does get very sludge-like in texture over a while. It doesn't breathe, but this much won't cause any trouble at all. It's only, the center to the outside is only like an inch of peat moss. So that's not enough to cause trouble. But any other avocado trees we've seen bigger than that, either in some growers use 3-gallon, most of them use 3-gallon or 2-gallon bags to grow their trees in. They're all in some kind of compost, redwood compost, coconut coir. We've seen a lot of root rot with those trees, even though they put rot-resistant rootstock on the tree. When the soil is half compost, it induces the rot. We're having so much trouble with them, we just quit ordering the clonal rootstocks. Yes.
There's a question in the chat from Dr. Villain. They're asking, when is the best time to put a bigger stake into the tree, and how do you do so without damaging the roots?
Well, it always damages the roots to do it unless you put a stake in when they're real young. So we put a stake in when they're this big before the roots ever touch it. And then the next stake we put in, which is this little bit bigger fiberglass stake we put in the same hole, still going to damage roots. You can't avoid it. Once it's this big, though, we have to use a stake like this. That's going to damage roots. Nothing you can do about it. Unless, well, of course, you can do a proper staking on this one when you get it in the ground, which is not one stake. You put 2 stakes about a foot from the trunk, and you tie the tree between them. That's the proper staking method. a single stake acts like a cast on your arm, so it doesn't develop as well. If the more plant part moves in the wind, what moving in the wind does is it tears between strands of cellulose, and the plant fills them with lignin, which is glue, and it makes it fatter and stronger. So if you have some movement in your trunk, it gets fatter and stronger faster than if you have a single stake on it. So it's nice to put a double stake so they have some play in there. It won't fall over, but you have some play in it to keep them, to get them stronger quicker. Here in a container, I don't have the room to do that. Although sometimes I do. You know, sometimes I'll put 2 fiberglass stakes on either side of a 15-gallon to do that. But it's nice to get it further out. Yes.
This one's my question. My ester that I bought like 6 months ago. No, I bought it on birthday. I can keep track. It's pretty big now. I have it in a half wine barrel, but I have 2 stakes because all of the branches are growing on like one side of the tree, and so it's just super lopsided. And I don't know like what I can do to help the foliage even out.
Well, when you have a lopsided tree, you just cut the branches on that are too long really short.
Okay.
I mean, just sacrifice that. We've done that with a lot of the trees we have. So, and if you have a branch coming out of the tree that looks almost as fat as the original trunk, you may not want the double trunk. So just cut it really short, make it start over again. That's going to lose a lot of time. And in that meantime, this trunk will grow bigger and bigger. So you just have to sacrifice if you want to keep it. So the nice thing about being a single trunk versus, is a lot of the old orchards, they let them branch at 2 feet and got this huge wide tree, was turning out that all fruit trees are most productive if you don't let them get too wide. So the problem with wide trees is the sunlight never gets, well, they say most, a typical fruit tree, sunlight doesn't penetrate more than 30 inches of foliage. That's it. So if you got a tree much wider than 5 foot, the inside's too dark to make flowers or fruit. So if you have a 20-foot wide tree, you got 15 foot of tree that's too dark to make fruit. You got a shell of fruit forming. So in an orchard, they're trying to, you know, they're telling people, well, if you can keep your trees narrower, maybe 8 foot tall so you can pick it, and 5, 6 foot wide, you're going to be more productive per square foot. Now you may have to, you have more room to put more avocado trees in. Just keep them narrower and make sure the sun can get to the bottom, and you'll have more fruit per tree. Some avocados won't cooperate because they won't fruit when they're young, but a lot of them do fruit when they're 4 or 5 foot tall. So you can keep them that size all their lives and be more productive per square foot. So in the old days, avocados were 25 foot apart in the orchards. Nowadays, well, okay, there's a new thing that they're doing. So South Africa and Japan have always grown avocados espaliered on wires. Japan especially, because they're inside greenhouses. They can't grow them outside. It's too cold in the winter. So they grow, they showed a picture of their Hass trees. They use a squat 15-gallon like this with their Hass, and they had 2 wires going up at about a 10, I think it was a 15-degree angle, both sides. So they had one branch of Hass going this way and one branch of Hass going that way, maybe 15, 20 foot. And they showed a picture of an operation just lined with avocados all up the branch. And they had the pots lined up just 3 feet apart, 3 foot on center. The greenhouse totally loaded with fruit. It's real impressive. And South Africa does espaliered avocados. I think they were using 3 wires. And he said these things are more productive per square foot than the regular trees are. And the University of California is supposed to be doing espalier work on avocados to see if it actually is more productive for the farm to do it that way than grow it as a tree. Now we've seen what the reason for that is. we planted an avocado tree at the Great Park in Irvine back in 2007 or 8. And we were there about 8-9 years ago because people told us this thing's really productive. And they were amazed how much fruit it's producing. So we're over there looking at it and had one branch a foot off the ground that was about 5 foot long. 30, no, it had, I think we counted, my memory's getting bad. It was either 30 or 50 avocados on one branch. It was just crazy. We're going, this one branch has more fruit than the entire rest of the tree does. And then I was at a customer's house later that year. They had a hass tree in their back patio, and there's one branch laying on the flagstone, totally loaded. So I saw it twice where a branch that was just flat on the ground was overproducing the rest of the tree. And the reason for that is the branch is supported. So they said the problem with avocados is you got this branch that reaches the sunlight, gets a lot of energy, makes a fruit. The way the fruit pulls that branch straight down into darkness, that branch will never ever flower again. Because now it's dark. The tree's got to spend energy to grow a new branch out to the sun, and then that fruits, and then it drops down in the shade again. So if you have a espalier, that same branch just keeps fruiting. And it gets really heavy with fruit. So that's espaliering. So they're supposed to be working with espaliers to see which avocados work best that way. So that's a new method. I mean, you can just plant the tree and start supporting your branches in different directions and see what you get on it. But amazing what they do when they're supported. So.
Gary, does that mean an older branch on a tree can still produce fruit?
Oh yeah. Well, wherever there's leaves this year, there can be flowers next year. So it's not the oldest parts of the branch, but the new side branches growing off that branch should have the flowers and leaves.
Are you sure it's not all the jet fuel buried underneath the Great Park?
Pardon?
Are you sure it's not all the jet fuel buried underneath the Great Park?
Well, they have certain areas that are off limits to growing things. It might be that though. Might be a special type of fertilizer.
Someone in the chat was asking if you could expand on the fertilization schedule for avocado trees and what type of fertilizer is best.
Well, here at the nursery, to get them up to size, what we do is basically osmocote plus a little organic plus a mycorrhizal fungus. Now, mycorrhizal fungus, if your tree's going to go on the ground, you don't need that. Mycorrhizal fungus is the organism in the ground that partners with plant roots that eats up leaves at the surface of the soil and takes nutrients down to the roots. That's how plants get fertilizer in nature. So we added, just in case someone was going to put this in a big pot and they won't get the mycorrhizal fungus, it might still get in there because mycorrhizal fungus travels by spores. But we put it in there just in case. And then we fertilize with osmocote. And we also put in a little bit of organic fertilizer for the mycorrhizal to feed off of. And that's how we start them off.
What's the delivery system for mycorrhizal? Is there just like a powder you can buy, or?
We have spores, and yeah, so there's a few fertilizers that put it in there because it makes their fertilizer work better. But we have envelopes of mycorrhizal fungus. And for a tree this size, you know, the envelope might have a couple tablespoons in it. For a tree like this, a pinch. Because it's spores. The spores are almost microscopic. Just a pinch would get the tree inoculated with the right fungus. And there's dozens of varieties of mycorrhizal fungus, and most plants don't care which one they meet up with. They'll just meet up with it, and it becomes part of a symbiotic system. So we do that to get them up to size. We do it again in a 15-gallon to get them up to big size. But once you get them in the ground, dead leaves might be good enough, or good organic fertilizer. We like organics; they're better than the chemicals in the long run. The chemical fertilizers, will feed the plant just fine. The organics feed the soil. So it keeps all the organisms from the ground happy, the ground fluffy. The mycorrhizal fungus is really important to pick up certain fertilizers. You want to keep it healthy. Some chemical fertilizers like a chemical 14, 14, 14, 16, 16, 16, that'll burn up your mycorrhizal fungus in a few years. Do not want to use that, even though it makes your plants look really good at first. It kills all the mycorrhizal fungus over time. So we don't want to use that. Now, Brokaw Nursery, a lot of avocado experts recommend using gypsum on the trees. Gypsum is calcium sulfate. Calcium is an important part of the wood of a tree. It's also important in making fruit. But it's also, they don't know why, it helps prevent root rot. And they recommend 35 pounds on a mature tree every year. When we used to get trees from them in 3-gallon pots, the entire top of the pot would be covered with about 1 inch of gypsum. So we know they were having some root rot issues. I don't know that you need to use that much gypsum if you get a healthy tree to start with, but it's always good to have gypsum or calcium with your tree. Now, we like this product a lot because this is 8% calcium. Gypsum is 89% calcium. Well, it's actually 99, what is that? 89 and 21. That's 100%. 100% calcium, and this is, how can it be 100% calcium and 17% sulfur? That doesn't make sense. Over 100% of things in here. 89 and 21 that's 110% already. Oh well. Not my problem. So those are some of the fertilizers we use. Generally in soil around here, we got lots of phosphorus. We're low in potassium. We're always lacking nitrogen. So in the future, nitrogen, the first number on boxes and fertilizer containers, will be the most important because that is very volatile. It goes away real fast. Whereas the phosphorus in the soil here, we don't need that at all. If in the ground, you need it in a pot. And the potassium, we've got potassium, but it's not quite high enough. So keep building that up. And then we need calcium. Okay, bug-wise, they do get a couple things, and I forgot to bring a sample in here. I'm gonna run out the door and bring a sample in just a moment. Pardon me. Okay, the main pests we worry about nowadays are relatively new. So in the last 25 years, both of them showed up. Now, occasionally we'll get damage from grasshoppers, and that's probably what these holes are. But they're hit and run guys. They usually don't stay around that long. If you find you have a lot of grasshoppers, especially the green ones in your yard, a product containing spinosad, I didn't bring a sample up here, would help get those off. But the main problems we're seeing nowadays, one is persea mites. So these leaves have all these little spots along the veins. When the persea mites are active, the spots are silver because the spots are actually little tiny spider web. if you have a microscope or a strong magnifying glass, you can look at that. You can see the spider web, and underneath each spider web, there's 3 to 5 or more little mites sucking on your leaf. So mites just act like regular spiders eat bugs. They inject the toxin and suck out the guts of a bug. But these mites are doing they're piercing single cells of the leaf, putting their toxin and then sucking it out, causing the leaf to go spotty. Now, when they first just showed up here about 25 years ago, we were defoliating avocado trees from them. Of course, when all the leaves fall off, it would cure the tree, and then the tree would grow the leaves back, but that's a lot of wasted energy. So the ag department brought in predator mites that eat these Persea mites. So it doesn't get so bad anymore unless you have a real isolated tree. So what happens, what we see is every 2 or 3 years, the Persea mites go through a neighborhood. They also attack a few plants related to avocados like camphor trees, Laurus nobilis, the bay leaf, a few other plants, and they'll blow in the wind and you'll get it on your tree every few years. If it doesn't get real bad, just leave it alone because the beneficial mites are blowing in behind them and eating them up. But if you want to, you can spray an oil spray on them. You attach the hose and just blast the tree good, and that kills most of them. And do it again in a few weeks. That should clean you up pretty good. Now, when we first had Persea mites, this worked really well. Nowadays, it's not working quite as well as it did 20 years ago. I don't know if the mites are evolving. They probably could be. So we have another product with essential oils in it, which is quite expensive. We use this once in a while. It seems to clean them up better. This is just mineral oil. And this is rosemary, clove, and peppermint oil. And we have another one on the shelf that also has thyme in it, but relatively expensive. The concentrate is like $50 for making 4 gallons, I think. 4 gallons, I think, is $50. So it doesn't go that far. But it works real well, and it's kitchen stuff. So it's very, very safe to use that.
So that can treat the Persea mites?
Persea mites and also the other bugs. So just 2 years ago, we got in the avocado lace bug. Which are very small. Most people don't notice them, and they do this damage. So they're on the bottom of the leaf, and they'll suck on that part of the leaf and just cause these brown areas that kind of resemble burns. But generally, they're controlled with the oils also. So if you spray your tree with oil now and then, you see any kind of spots on the leaves, hit it with the oil. Okay, so your trees can get root rot. If you buy a tree from any other nursery, it probably has root rot. The way you know you've got root rot is you start getting, your tree starts losing all its leaves on the branches. You have new leaves at the end of the branch, but the leaves are tiny. They're not growing well. They're all brown edged. Now this leaf is just old, so as the leaves get older, they get this brown edge. But if you have a lot of small leaves at the ends of the branches, and the tree's not growing very well and it burns in the sun, that's root rot. So the roots aren't healthy at all. And again, a lot of trees you buy from any other nursery will have root rot on them. Now, in South Africa, they found that this material here, which is mono and dipotassium salts of phosphorus acid, so both potassium and phosphorus are fertilizers, so they don't consider this a poison at all. And it's the phosphorus that's doing the work. well, they found if you inject this into the trunk of a 90% dead avocado, will come back to life. So they were really surprised how effective it is if you inject it. Now, most of us don't have injectors. Orange County Farm Supply carries them, where you can inject things right into the trunk. But if you want to use this to save an avocado, they say it is pretty amazing. You can also apply it on the foliage. I'm not sure if a foliar application is as effective as trunk, especially if there's no leaves left. Foliar application is probably not as effective. So that's why they have the trunk injection method here. They do not have a root drenching method. However, it was on the original label, but maybe it doesn't work. So now they just say foliar or trunk injection. But there are other plants on this product that they do list soil drenching. If you want to just try to do it, you can probably do that one. Don't tell anyone I told you that. You're supposed to follow the instructions on the label. But there's no waiting times on here. It's not considered a poison to people. It's just a fertilizer. Now, fertilizers aren't good for us to eat, but they're not necessarily, they don't cause nerve damage. They don't cause cancer. They don't do all that stuff. This is also a very valuable thing for downy disease on a lot of plants. So there's downy disease on roses that makes them defoliate when it's raining. There is downy disease on basil that makes the leaves at the bottom of the plant turn yellow and shrivel up, turn gray. There is downy disease on onions, downy disease on impatiens that makes the leaves turn yellow and shrivel up. So this controls all those. Plus, it's valuable also in the yard if you have apples or pears or loquats. It does do a good job on fire blight. So a good tool to have around if you've got any of those plants. Now, putting them in the ground, we like the 5-gallon size the best because the roots aren't too deep. So this roots go down, this is 10 inches of root. Avocado roots may go down a foot in most gardens. If you get this tall 15-gallon, that's 15 inches of root. You could lose the bottom 6 or 8 inches of root on that thing by putting it in the ground. It's too deep. So you have to compensate by, well, the best way to compensate, just surround it with sand. So dig a hole big enough to get the bigger container in the ground, surround it with sand to keep the airflow down to the bottom of the root zone. With these 5 gallons, it's still nice to do some of that to make this, especially if you have clay dirt. Now, I've grown avocados in pure clay. And as long as it's well-drained clay, it's still fine. So at my last house, I had real bad clay soil. My geologist friend said he was the lead geologist in that neighborhood. So even though my neighborhood is sandy, we're at the edge of a 10-foot drop. And they learned to pack the soil around a 10-foot drop 2 foot deep in clay so the water won't get in the soil. He says if water gets in that soil, the hill will slide. So my backyard is 2 foot in packed clay. We saw the earth movers on there. I mean, they stored the earth movers on my backyard. So it is hard packed clay. But right at the edge of that drop off, we planted an avocado in there. It grew 5 foot the first year. They like well-drained clay. So like they say, the heavenly place to grow avocados in Orange County is those foothills back here. They said it's sandy clay. They love that on the hills. Plenty of water, good drainage. Inland a little farther so it's warmer. That's supposed to be one of the best areas to grow avocados in, is on those clay slopes. As long as you're not in a low spot where the water can sit for months at a time if it rains real hard. Now, this is from a friend's orchard by Foothill High School. This is their soil. They've got about 20 avocados in it. Now, about half of them are on a slope. The rest of them are in flat ground. And when it rains in the winter, it just is just a mud puddle. But their avocados look fine. Now they did surround them with sand, but they're sitting in clay and they're not elevated. So University of California, if you look at their recommendations for growing avocados, they will tell you make a 2-foot high berm and plant your avocado tree at the top of that berm to make sure it drains well. Now we think they do this because the avocados they're using have compost roots, because that's the way they grow avocado trees, with the compost.
It's a hedgerow, isn't it?
Pardon?
It'd be a hedgerow.
Not a hedgerow, but just
I mean, if you have a line,
yeah.
you know,
But so we've seen videos of them walking through their orchards, and you're climbing in little hills, you go back down there. So they have avocados on 2-foot high hills to prevent root rot. So when you have an tree elevated above ground level, the water does get pulled down to the level of the ground. And when water gets pulled down, the air gets pulled in after. So if you put your avocado on a slight mound, it helps, especially if you buy an avocado that's got compost on it. You don't want this to be saturated. Saturated compost is oxygen. Well, there's no oxygen at all in it. You have to make sure that it's no longer saturated to get the air back into the compost to get the oxygen back in there. Whereas if you get one of our trees, you can keep that wet. It's just not going to hurt it. I'm sure in Mexico and Guatemala, they get the hurricanes coming through. Their ground is saturated for weeks at a time. I don't think the avocados suddenly all die from 20 inches of rain on them. So I don't think you have to go this high, but it's nice to elevate them a little bit. That always helps. And you can surround them with sand if you really want to be careful. You can use our top pot potting soil, which is what we grow our avocados in, is meant to resemble sand, but at less than half the weight. So that's all we're doing with this. Sand works just fine. This is more expensive than sand. So a bag of sand this big, well, it'll be slightly bigger than this. So 50-pound bag of sand is $5. This is a slightly smaller bag of our top pot. It's, what is it? $10. So sand is a lot cheap. It's more than less than half the price of our top pot. But this is easier to handle. Now, I don't have any bags right now. This is my only bag I have at the moment. The company who bags it was bought up by another company back east, and the back east company forgot that they need to register products in California. So we're in the process of re-registering. They're in the process of re-registering our product for us. They got 50 products to re-register, so we'll see how fast we get ours back. We made up our own top pot from a local soil company, and we've got it in bags out there, but they don't have our quote bag on it at the moment.
What do you usually mix the sand with? What's the best way to mix sand with?
Sand by itself is a perfect growing medium.
Just by itself. You use some of the ambient soil mixed into it, or
You just put sand in there. It's fine.
just sand?
Yeah, if you want. So like when the forest rose growers grow their plants in sand because they're the most vigorous in sand. My dad's bonsai book said sand was the most vigorous growing medium you can use on plants. All the old literature said sand was the best. So everybody now thinks it's compost, but there's no truth to that at all. Yes.
The chat questions are piling up, so I'll ask you real quick. Is it advisable to cut down a tree nearly completely that is 10 years old and very weak? Yeah. Imagine not to see it.
You cut a weak tree, you probably will kill it.
Okay.
It takes a lot of energy to repair a big cut. Now, just so you know, in the old days, when avocado trees would eventually get to like 25 foot tall, no one can pick them anymore, they would stump them. But those were healthy trees they stumped. So I stumped a tree 15 years ago, 12 years ago, to see what would happen. So I had a bacon avocado tree that was 20 foot tall, again, a little tall. So I just took my chainsaw in winter and chopped it off at 4 feet, which is what they recommended. Nothing happened for 3 months, and suddenly in summer it took off, grew 6 feet, lots of branching, flowered the next year and made a crop. So it doesn't stop them very long, and it gets them short again. They said they did that throughout San Diego in 2013 or 14 when they had no rain that year, no water that year. They stumped all the avocado trees, so the water usage was very low that year. So you can stump them to get them short, but now they don't do that. They just cut the trees every winter, keep them under 10 feet, because no one wants to climb ladders to pick avocados, so they just cut them every year. The branches you cut at top won't fruit, but all the side branches and everything will fruit. And again, it's nice to keep your trees, if you can, not too wide so that the sunlight gets all the way through the tree. Again, some avocados will be easier to do that with than others. We'll go over the varieties and tell you about that.
Why is it called a bacon avocado?
Jim Bacon.
Oh, I should have guessed the name.
Most avocados are named after people.
Deeps is asking, can you leave these trees indoors over winter? I mean, not during the ground, obviously.
Well, if you live in New York, that's your only thing. So avocados can't go below. Most avocados can't go below 25. That's about it. So the record cold we had here was 23 in 1990, December 23 and 24, and most of our trees froze to the dirt. Now, if the trees had a trunk this big, they didn't. The trunk was saved, but you lost all your foliage and your branches. So avocados are quite sensitive to cold among all fruit trees.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few avocados that go down into the teens, but those varieties which are grown like in Arizona, the fruit they make is about this big. So there are cold hardy avocados, but they don't have the big fruit. They got the real tiny fruit. So
The last question was, someone was asking, what do you think of decomposing granite? But now they're arguing in the chat that decomposing granite is just sand.
no,
And getting really heated.
no, decomposed granite's fine. So decomposed granite, so granite is what soil is made out of. And when it decomposes, initially it's kind of crumbly granite. And that's what decomposed granite is. When it goes through a riverbed, that's when you get, the riverbed takes all the particles and makes them rounder. And that's when you get sand and you get silt and you get clay, which is flat flakes, once it goes through a riverbed. But when it's just sitting there above a river on a hillside, it's decomposed granite. And that's a lot of the orchards down in Fallbrook and Vista are on decomposed granite. Here we got a lot of sandy clay. We used to have orchards in Irvine in this good sandy loam. So that's good stuff too. I mean, the Irvine Field Station is in this stuff. It's really nice. They grow any plant there. Yes.
Jeremy, I've got an Esther plant right now. It's about 2.5 years old. It's about 6 feet tall, and it's got 20 small avocados on them, 3 feet long. How long would I have to wait before I can harvest it?
Till next April. Most avocados take a year to ripen. There's some that are faster, but most avocados from the time they bloom to the time you pick them is about a year, and some will hang on for half year beyond that.
Yeah, I'm a geologist, and sand is really a description of particle size rather than composition.
Mm-hmm.
So one end of the spectrum that we see in the nurseries, or not the nurseries, but the builder supply stores, is silica sand, which is 100% quartz. It's white. And then the other end of the spectrum is what we kind of call decomposed granite, which is the breaking down of granitic rocks, which have a number of different minerals and feldspars and such.
Mm-hmm.
And I've often wondered when you as a nurseryman are talking about sandy soil, whether the sand that these plants enjoy having around should be the sand with the variety of minerals in there versus silica sand, which is just pure white sand with no other minerals. The other minerals will break down with time.
Right.
They all do, but except for stuff.
Well, University of California, Davis went around studying the soils in Central Valley. They said the plants they're studying didn't depend on the soil for nutrition. They're just recycling dead leaves. So the majority of plants recycle dead leaves. There's only a few plants that live off the minerals in the ground, and those are weeds.
So what the sand is composed of makes no difference.
Probably not, yeah.
It's just the physical.
Right,
It's grain size for drainage.
right.
And
Or next one, right?
porosity of the material.
Glad to have a geologist here.
Okay, I think I covered everything about culture. Yeah, so if you have an avocado tree with 2 trunks, there's nothing really wrong with that. It's going to take up probably more room in your garden. Yeah, I think we covered most about culture. So let's go over the varieties. Mhm.
And we're told to wait till fall, maybe.
Someone here told you that?
That's what, yes.
Oh boy.
Okay, so we need to know differently. And then how far apart do they plant them? So those are my questions. When should I, if they're going beautiful?
Yeah, right now is probably the best time of year, or starting in May. So in May, the soil is actually ideal temperature finally for the roots, because it is a little cool, you know, like an orchard. The orchards are usually planted spring up until mid-fall, and then after that, they say don't plant them. The soil is too cold. So the roots grow in warm soil. So this is ideal right now. Get them out of, you know, and you don't want them in a pot too long because the roots start burning up if the pot's in the sun. So it's nice to get them in the ground ASAP in May, June, July, you know, as soon as you can. So the ground's nice and warm. The roots will actually grow real nicely now. And I mean, I planted avocados 3 feet apart before, but realistically, at least 7 or 8 foot between trunks, so that each one can grow at least 5 foot wide. You get a decent crop on those. You know, if you want 200 avocados, you got to get more room on a tree. But you know, like a friend of mine that has the orchard, they had an 8 foot wide, 8 foot tall gem tree make 350 avocados a few years ago. They were amazed. That was a lot of avocados for one tree. Unfortunately, 100 of them were messed up by squirrels, but they still had 250 to sell, which they said was amazing. So that's an 8 foot tree, which would need at least 10 or 12 foot spacing between trunks. So you can do that.
Okay, so if we're gonna plant them in the front yard and we have a sprinkler system, is that gonna be an issue? Cause it comes, you know, you have a regimen that you're turning.
Good question, the watering. So watering on avocado trees, we want to keep them consistently moist, the soil at least as deep as the roots go, which is about 1 foot. Now, if you're in sandy soil, it's deeper than that, but if you're in normal soil, they only go down about 1 foot. So the way you check moisture ground, you get a stick, at least this thick, which is pencil thick, to a piece of rebar that's, say, 1/2 inch thick. And you see how far you can push it in the ground where you just watered the ground or where you watered the ground. If you can push in the ground 1 to 1.5 foot deep, you're right on target with the moisture level. If you can't go in more than 10 inches, your tree's running dry. It's going to abort leaves, it's going to abort fruit. So make sure you keep it at least 1 foot deep if you can year round. Since avocados pretty much do stuff year round, they don't really have an off season like some trees do. And whatever it takes to water. Now, we like to water at least half the drips underneath the drip line of a tree. It's better to water the whole area, but at least half. And it's better to water as frequently as you can. So, you know, in the old days, they didn't have the technology, we would flood the fields once a week, which means it was too wet for 3 days, too dry for 3 days, perfect for 1 day of the week. Now they use micro sprinklers or drip systems. They were watering for a long time, 2 hours every 2 days, but now the research is showing daily irrigation and even 3 times a day irrigation is ideal, which means you want to keep your moisture level as even as you can. No wets, no dry, just even. I mean, there's a farm in near Sacramento, they said that waters 18 times a day. But they have, it's all run by computers. Computer says, this is how much water the plant used last hour, we're going to water it. And whenever it's warm enough to use water, they're going to water it. They said 18 hours a day in near Sacramento, it's hot enough for the plants losing water. So, but they said they saved 30% on their water bill. But out of Brazil and Florida, both last year we got, irrigation research showing that 3 times a day for 20 minutes was superior than 2 hours every 2 days. The same amount of water, but the plant just did better with the constant irrigation. So
Even a newer tree or a younger tree?
especially younger trees, they don't have a root system yet.
Okay, so if you're putting in the front yard and you've got the sprinkler system, let's say you're once a day for 20 minutes, what's your gut feeling on that?
Well, initially, 3 times a day for 5 is better.
Okay. Good to know.
Now, the problem when you keep things that wet, if you don't have ground cover on the ground, you're going to get a lot of weeds starting. So constant moisture, so it gets a lot of seeds growing. But if you cover the ground with mulch, or if you got bushes around your avocados to stop the weeds from growing, that's fine.
It's just open grass.
Yeah, that's fine. Grass loves to be watered 3 times a day. So, yes.
So I have a chain link fence, and I want to create a hedgerow around, and I want to plant avocado trees to grow on the fence. I'd like to know what the intervals should be. I'd like to know also, recommend any companion plants to put in the house.
Don't know anything about companion plants. I certainly wouldn't do rosemary or citrus,
Okay.
but I don't know. Companion planting is kind of odd. I don't know if there's any real reason behind it. Now, it's nice to have a mixed ecosystem, so no one likes just avocado trees. So it's nice to have other plants in there, but I don't know which plants make it better. I mean, they want all the orchards to put in cover crops because we don't want bare dirt around trees, and we want some other kind of plant root system in there. So it's nice to plant things around your avocados, but I don't know what the best one is. I mean, the main thing you want to avoid, of course, is anything that shades the tree, but I don't know what's best.
Pretty much.
Pardon?
Anything I choose?
Yeah, you want to stay away from the stuff that takes over, like morning glory, or
Oh,
you want to avoid some things that are real nasty. But
still turning out really well.
I mean, at the orchard nearby, they use clover. They use this perennial clover. So, okay, so irrigation got covered. Yes.
What about these tree rings?
Pardon?
Tree rings, like a 30-inch ring.
Well,
Pretty nice. Small tree.
yeah, a tree ring I would only use if you're keeping the tree small. And if you watered within that zone, that's okay. I mean, avocados don't seem to care if they get their trunks wet, but yeah, you want to cover as much area underneath the drip lines you can. I mean, realistically, if you gave them water 50 foot away, they'll eventually find it. But it's nice to keep it near the trunk. The roots are there. Fertilizer wise too, I was told by ag agents, always throw the fertilizer near the trunk because you don't know where the roots are. You can't see through the dirt. But if you put it near the trunk, the tree will find it. Yes.
Someone in the chat is asking, what's the best method to graft an avocado?
I know nothing about grafting.
You
You have to ask my daughter that one. I mean, it's not easy to graft evergreen plants, but And when I used to graft in the 1980s, we didn't have the tools we have nowadays. So it's much easier to do it nowadays, but that's not my thing anymore. So, okay, let's go over some of the,
The interval on the fence, how wide can I go between trees?
don't know yet.
Oh,
University of California is doing the research right now. Now, if you can look up the research from South Africa, see if you can find it, because in Japan they had the 15 foot on both sides of the trunk as is the branch length, but the one in South Africa, I'm not sure the spacing they're using. So,
15.
of course, it would take years to get that length. So you might want to put them closer.
Maybe start with 3.
Okay, variety wise, the first one that became famous was Fuerte. And that was brought up from Mexico, I believe, by someone that worked for Wilson Popenoe who lived in Altadena. So they planted that tree in Altadena. I think it's no longer there. I think the Eden Canyon fire took it out. But Fuerte survived some early frost in California, so Fuerte means strong. So that was the first tree in our orchards. It is still one of the top tasting avocados, but the tree is not heavily productive many times, although it can be. So it's really where the tree, they don't want to do it commercially because the tree production is hit or miss, and they don't usually start when they're young. Like my parents had 2 Fuerte trees when I was a kid. One was a big tree that was already there making lots of fruit. The other one they planted, and it got about 10 foot tall and 15 foot wide before it produced a single fruit, which is big. So it's not a reliable young producer. It blooms early. That's probably one of the reasons, but it is one of the top tasting fruits. It is a B type. That's on your handouts. Now, Fuerte got real famous, so what they did is they took it around the world, and in Israel, they got Fuertes, but they weren't very productive. So they took babies out of the seeds of Fuertes, and they selected Edinger. Which is also a B type. So Fuerte fruits winter, spring, Edinger about the same time. Edinger usually blooms at second year and sets a crop at second year, so it's more precocious than Fuerte. Not quite as good as Fuerte. Fuerte is one of the top avocados, but Edinger is improved over it. Now, Edronol, I don't have at the moment out there. That seems to be related to Fuerte because when you look at the stems on Edronol and Fuerte and Edinger, they'll have some red striations in the stems, which seems very similar. And then Charwil, which is a B also from Australia, it's supposed to be related to Edronol. Someone named Sharp and someone named Wilson down in Australia got together and breeding avocados, so they named it Charwil after Sharp and Wilson, I believe. But they said Edronol was one of the parents, and Edronol may be related closely to Fuerte. So they all look similar, and when they're growing. They'll have good fruit. Charwil is one of the best fruits. Fuerte is one of the best fruits out there. Edronol is certainly good. Edronol, to me, the tree looks really healthy. If you've ever seen an Edronol tree, the trunk is thick. The leaves and branches are thick. The leaves are really big. It looks really vigorous. The literature claims it's not that big a growing tree, but all avocados can grow big if you give them time. They'll all grow big. Here it says tall and slender. We notice that it's a very central trunk on the Adrenal. So it is quite impressive. The fruit's big. We ate the fruit a couple of years ago. They were slightly pear-shaped and big. Nice sized fruit. We sold the tree. The next homeowner on the next year got 20 on it. So we had 4. The second year had 20. It's third year. So it's nice precocious. Charwell for us hasn't been very precocious at all. Like Forte, our Charwell didn't produce until its 4th year. Edinger second year, Edrenal second year. So, you know, it's in the long run, it may not make a big difference, but we like the trees that are precocious because if they're fruiting when they're 6 foot tall, that means you can probably keep them that size and keep them productive. So that's kind of like the Fuerte line. And then, of course, Haas came out, not Haas. Haas is spelled H-A-A-S. Brokaw, who's our supplier, was Rudolph Haas's neighbor in Yorba Linda when the Haas tree was discovered in Yorba Linda. So they keep reminding me it's not Haas, it's Haas. In the 1920s, this tree came up on their property in a grove of orchard full of Fuertes, and they said, well, this is better producer, smaller fruits, stronger skins. That became over time. And in fact, I read once, I believe Haas was the first plant patented in the U.S. I'm not certain, but I believe it was that Rudolph Haas says, you know, I know my neighbors are stealing the scion wood, and none of them are rich people. I don't want to sue them because they're violating the patent. he had trouble with his patent because the person who does the patent has to police it. And he said, I just can't do that to my neighbors. None of them are rich. So he didn't make much money on his patent of the Haas tree. Patents last 20 years. So Haas is an A-type. So Haas, the average production, again, 110 fruit per tree per year. It's just not that heavy. So Haas gave rise to one of the seedlings of Haas was called Thiel, which was okay, but Thiel gave rise to Gwen. And Gwen is one of our good sellers too. It is the most precocious avocado that anyone's seen. Second year tree. So this is a first year tree. Next year, a Gwen is supposed to produce, that's not a Gwen, but a Gwen is supposed to produce 54 fruit. Yes?
How do you keep the fruit on the tree without breaking the branches?
Yeah.
They did, the branches just hang.
They just hang down.
Yeah. So Gwen is the heaviest flowering tree we've ever seen too. So we had a Gwen here and second year here. And most avocados, when they bloom in the winter, you get a cluster of flowers off the end of the branch. And occasionally you get flower clusters off a few nodes down. When we had a Gwen here, every node on the tree was making flowers. The trunk was making flowers. Every node on this tree was making flowers. It outblooms any avocado by at least 10 times. It is crazy the amount of flowering a Gwen does. 54 fruit on its second year was the average they had at the Irvine Field Station when they had grafted the trees over in their second year, 54 fruit. They showed pictures. I have a picture in my cubby over there of a Gwen tree on its third year at the field station. The guy was standing here. The tree was this tall, 140 fruit hanging on this tree.
Oh, poor thing.
So it was this tall. The branches are just laying on the ground. So they promote it as a dwarf avocado tree of Hass-type fruit. A lot of orchards tried it, and they told the university, we cannot grow this tree. There's so much fruit on it. The trunks keep breaking on us. And I've had 2 homeowners tell me that too. Their trunks just broke. Too much fruit on the trees. So what happened was Robert Lamb, who had a big ranch in Camarillo with Gwens on it, they took 20,000 pits out of their Gwen fruit and planted a whole bunch of trees on, 20,000 trees on their property up in Camarillo, and evaluated all the babies of Gwen to see what they can come up with. And from that Gwen, they got, well, first they got lamb, which is sometimes written as Lamb Hass, but he named it after himself, a Gwen seedling. They got Gem. They got Harvest. They got Luna. And I forgot to leave room for Surprise. So all of these fruit better than Hass. They're not quite as bad as Gwen. They won't self-destruct as easily as Gwen. This Harvest, I don't know. Luna's a B, and Surprise is a B type. So most of the orchards going in, they're planting Gems and Surprise.
Where did the Hass actually come from? I mean, what was it developed from?
This is seed that they stuck in the ground, probably a pit from a Forte, because that's what they had. So they were growing pits to grow the roots and then grafting them over to Fuertes. And they said one of the grafts kept failing. They gave up trying to graft it, and it became the Hass tree. So avocados, there's 3 different major genetics, Guatemala, Mexican, and West Indies. The West Indies are, if you go to Florida and you look at their supermarkets, they got these avocados, these huge 3-4 pound avocados. West Indian, they call them the slim cados. They have hardly any oil in them. But now we know that the oil in avocados makes you skinnier. It doesn't make you fat, it makes you skinnier. So oils are better for you. Carbohydrates what make you fat. So you don't want sugar in your avocados. You want oil in them because your body knows how to burn the oil really, really fast. So, but that's the West Indies. Most of our avocados are a mixture of Guatemalan and Mexican. Fuerte and these are mostly Mexican. These are kind of in-betweeners. So Gem and Surprise, again, Lamb is one they've been using for a while. That's where these smooth fruit are probably from a Lamb avocado, and the pebbly ones are the original Hass. Gwens are a little smooth too. Gems are smooth also. Luna is the newest one out that was on Time magazine 3 years ago as the invention of the year. It's like, okay, I don't think we created it. Nature did that one, but we selected Luna. But we can't get Luna. You have to sign a contract to get it, where you pay royalty fees every year to own one. It's like, who's going to do that?
Oh my God, it's like Monsanto.
Well, see, in the past, patents never worked, so it's like, so they decided to go royalty on this one. So if you got a Luna and you're not paying money, you can't sell your fruit, because they'll just check the fruit. If it's a Luna fruit, you're going into jail. You didn't pay your royalties. Whereas patents, the person that created the patent has to police it. But with Luna, you can just check the crop at the supermarket and see what the genetics are. So anyway, that's your Hass type. Most Hass types you pick in the spring, late winter, spring. Lamb hangs on really late. Lamb supposedly will hang till November, although if we have a warm year, it's not going to hang that long. You better pick it before the end of summer. So
Is lamb like the typical Hass that you find usually at the grocery store? 'Cause I don't see just like a regular Hass on the sheet. I just see lamb Hass.
Yeah, this is Hass. This is probably lamb. Because when we've grown lamb, they had these little vein-like things going through them.
But there's a variety that's just Hass.
Well, this is Hass.
I don't see it on the sheet.
I don't carry Hass.
Oh, these are just ones you carry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's 1,000 varieties of avocados, so.
Speaking of which,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
well, what was your question?
There's just a few chats. Someone was asking if you have any esters in 5-gallon.
We did this morning.
And then other people were asking if the online people could get this handout somehow.
It may be on our website. I'm not positive it is. There's something on our website. So the other thing in here that's really popular. So down in Mexico in the 1980s, Carlos Mendez found one of his Hass trees flowering multiple times a year. Now, we've known a lot of people who said their Hass tree blooms multiple times a year too, but the one in Mexico, which was originally labeled Hass Mendez strain, is the only tree that they've been able to take cuttings off of and get all the babies to do that too. So Carlos Mendez, when it came up, Brokaw brought it up to California. They started calling it Carmen, but its official name is Hass Mendez strain for Carlos Mendez, but Carmen is Carlos Mendez. So it's one of our top sellers. So Carmen has the ability to bloom more than once a year. It's a Hass. Genetically, it's Hass. I brought a fruit off my Carmen tree at my house, and it looks just like a regular Hass. It's pebbly, dull, ripens black. This is a Carmen tree here. And what they note that's different about it, it's not very central leaderish. So most avocados, they get one major stem coming out of them. Carmen tends to split off in all directions. It doesn't seem to have very good apical dominance. So the trees usually stay low and squat and wide. And here, this one's making flowers for this summer. So it's already blooming off season. So Carmen was promoted for a while as being way more productive than Hass. However, they're not reliable bloomers. They're unpredictable plants. So Brokaw showed a picture of a Carmen orchard in bloom in the spring, and only about 2/3 of the trees were blooming. So I've grown a Carmen in my house for 10 years. The first year it had a normal spring bloom. I said, okay, that's fine. The next year it actually bloomed winter, spring, summer, and fall. And every time it bloomed, it had some fruit. I go, amazing. Boy, we're gonna have to promote this. And then it took 3 years off and then bloomed it all. Okay, what's going on? Right now it's got that real heavy crop on it, so I'm not about to pull it out. But Brokaw's admitting they don't know what the Carmens are gonna do. But if you have 100 Carmen trees, you can go into your orchard any day you want and pick ripe fruit. Every tree seems to be on a different schedule. So my tree took 3 years off and now it's in production again. One of my customers keeps sending me pictures. Says, my Carmen never stops blooming ever. And I told him, because I thought with an avocado tree, once you formed a fruit on that branch is never going to bloom again. So he had to show me a picture of his Carmen fruit hanging here with flowers all around the fruit. He says it's just crazy bloomer. So Carmen, now Brokaw's been running a contest or a test between Carmen and Jim to see which orchard produced more. They said it's neck and neck. So both Jim and Carmen are real heavy producers compared to Hass. So they're not positive yet which one's going to be the better one for an orchard, but Carmen is nice if you have, say, more than one of them. So at the orchard I walk through every morning, We planted 3 Carmens there about 5 years ago. 2 years ago, they had their spring bloom, light fruit set. Last year, all 3 have a heavy spring bloom, good fruit set. Last summer, 2 of the 3 trees bloomed and had good fruit set. And last fall, 1 of the 3 bloomed again. So they're happy with that tree. I mean, they got fruit of all sizes on the tree. Tree is like this, the trees are about this tall and about maybe 8 foot wide. So they're going to town now. So Carmen is another one of our top selling trees. But Gem is certainly a good one too. Gem, you'll get that good spring crop every year. Lamb is nice too. So lamb, also real tight tree, whereas Gem and Carmen seems to be more spreading. And Surprise, which is a B type, is often planted along with Gems. Gem is short for Gray Edward Martin. He was one of the researchers over at the field station, so he got to name it after himself. Yeah, Surprise is really good fruit too, but for a B type. So at the orchard, they've got Surprise, Gem, and Carmen over at the orchard. Yes.
Relative to the harvesting, did you expect to see blooms and then from blooms to fruit?
Well, again, most fruit take 1 year to pick after so most, like these all bloom February, March, April, and you start picking the fruit around February. I mean, you can't tell when it's ripe, really. You just have to pick one and see. If it takes more than a week to ripen, it's not ready yet. A lot of times, if you pick them too early, they're rubbery. They never soften up. Of course, so it's a little hard that way. You have to, every year it's going to be a little different too, because like this year, it got warm so early, the fruit's going to be off the trees early next year because they started, developing early this year. So every year is different. You just have to pick one and see how long it takes to ripen. And most have 4 or 5 months of hang time, but some years they don't. Now my Carmen tree, we've been picking it for 3 months now, and it still has a lot of fruit on there. So I'll probably get another month out of it. And then if, of course, some years it'll have fruit all year. So, and all you do is you look at the size of it and start picking, because you can't tell, one crop from another. Sometimes it's difficult to tell. Okay, so that's these genetics. And then the other famous one are the true Guatemalans. So Nabal came from Guatemala quite a long time ago, and it is good. Nabal is, so this is Nabal. It's one of the best avocados you'll ever eat. People don't usually plant it because it's strongly alternate bearing. A lot of people haven't been able to stop it. You can stop it, but it's not easy. It takes some work. Alternate bearing means it makes a huge crop 1 year, nothing the next. And then when it makes a year, it makes nothing. It's so strong and it makes a huge crop. And so it just goes huge, nothing, huge, nothing. Of course, all you do is plant 2 trees. And you have one year. Now, one of the guys down south, I think it's Greg Alder, says, I just cut one side of the tree off 1 year and let it regrow. So now he just alternates between sides of the trees. So it's possible to get it not to alternate bear, but it's not really easy. But huge crops 1 year, and they are good. The skin on this is so thick that one of the problems with Nabal, you can't tell when it's ripe because the skin hardly will press in when it's ripe. So what they say to do is you take the top off and you poke a toothpick in there. If it still can't poke it in, it's still not ripe yet. But if you can poke it into the flesh, it's ready. because it's hard to tell when this is ripe. It doesn't turn black and it doesn't get soft. So that's Nabal.
Gary, what avocado was that?
Nabal. So one of Nabal's daughters is Reed. And Reed's considered the better one to have. So this is Reed. The Reed can actually get close to this size too. This is a smaller Reed, probably because it's been picked a little bit early. Well, it's about time to pick it. June is a good time to pick it. So Reed's got thick skin too. So both of these, you need a real good knife to cut through them. And the shell is so hard, it's like a wooden bowl. You can scoop out the flesh, make guacamole, and serve it in the shell. Really thick shell on both of these. And Reed is rated one of our top avocados also. It tends to be creamy and a lot oilier and creamier. It's milder than Nabal. Nabal's got a little more acidity to it, so it's a little stronger, richer flavor. But still, Reed is really good. Reed tends to average a pound. Nabal maybe slightly bigger than that. And they both are usually picked in the summer. Now, when I first had a Reed, I didn't know what time year to pick it. So I picked one in January and just stayed rubbery. You can't eat in January. Picked one in April and I thought, well, it's pretty good. So I finished off the tree before summer. The book says June through November. But I always ate my Reeds before summer even started because they were already so good by April. But again, that's the weather. Those years I had must have been hot springs. So the Reed ripened early. Now, another one we just got this year that is also from Guatemala is Nimlio. Nimlio is bigger than Nabal. I don't have one yet. We have the trees out there. We'll see what the fruit turns out, but it's supposed to be, bigger than Nabal and woodier skin than Nabal. And they said it's really good also. So we'll have to see how Nimlio turns out. I mean, those are, when you get that size, what is that? Size of a, yeah. Now, this is Queen. I believe Queen is Guatemalan also. And this is probably a 3-pounder, so it's another really big one. One of the problems we have with the big avocados, it's hard to tell when they're ripe, and when they get overripe, they just don't taste good at all. So that is a problem. It's really hard. This may be already totally ripe, and we don't know it, so we'll have to cut one of those open or poke a stick in the stem place and see if we can poke it in there and see what happens. So that's one of the issues with the big fruit is, I mean, there's fruit that are bigger than this. Someone said daily 11 is 4 pounds. There's some really big avocados out there, but then what do? You have to have a whole family together to eat one. So those are the true Guatemalans. And they are supposedly more cold sensitive. Now, the top tasting avocado at the Irvine Field Station is one called Jan Boyce. So that's supposed to be the best one here. It may not be better tasting in Riverside, but here at the Irvine Field Station is the best tasting. We first ate it 3 years ago, and we'll say it's awful good. It may be the best tasting avocado out there. So it does have a little more spice to it, which means it's not just creamy and oily. It's got some bite. It's not heads or tails better than the other excellent varieties, but it is slightly better. The hang time is not good. So it's a short season, maybe 2 months. Late winter, early spring is about it. I think our tree all the fruit fell off before April. So it is a short season. But have to admit it's really good. And it produced at 6 feet. It can get big, but it produced at 6 feet. Now reed, so Nabal and Nimlio Queen are all big trees and they don't seem to produce when they're young. Reed produces on its second year. So reed is nice to have in the garden. It's not only can produce when it's short, it is a naturally narrow tree. So I've seen reed trees that were never pruned that are 20 foot tall, but only 8 foot wide. It is unusually narrow. And when you see the trees, they're built like Christmas trees, very apically dominant trunk. So a friend of mine had a reed tree in a 24-inch box. So his tree was, I saw it on its 5th year, about like this and about like this in a 24-inch box. 80 avocados in a pot. I'm going, you know, before I saw that, I was telling people, no use growing an avocado pot. You're only gonna get like 2 or 3 fruit. He had 80 avocados hanging on that thing. I couldn't believe it. So from that point on, I tell people, well, you can grow them in a big pot. Especially some of the heavy producers like Gwen and Jim and Lamb and those, along with the reed. Yes.
So what kind of soil that you put in that pot? Is that
Either straight sand or hard top pot. Either one will work. Any combinations between the two will work.
just a friend of mine gave me them, and then he built a slate and he grow them in ground. So I in 25 gallons of cane, but I'm telling you, I don't know what should I do.
Yeah, either get sand from Home Depot or get our top pot. Both will work fine. 25 gallons, still a little small, but you'll probably get a dozen or more.
So what is the, like, what is your suggested size for the pot?
As big as you can. We have 100-gallon pots here. We have a 3/4 barrel, which is 33 gallons. We have 24. You know, the problem with the redwood 24-inch box, we have 36, 30, 24, 20-inch, and 16-inch red boxes. They only last 5 to 10 years. The black plastic will probably last 20. The half barrels and the 3/4 barrels will probably last close to 22. So they last longer. Pardon?
What the size of your friend had?
He had a 24-inch box. 24-inch box is about 35 gallons, which is really close to the same size as a 33-gallon, 3/4 barrel.
So you plant in pot like that, which are big size, fertilizers just the same as.
You have to fertilize more often, only because containers, the fertilizer flows through too fast. The ground it doesn't, it stays in place. So if you grow in a pot, you have to fertilize more frequently, or put a time release in there, or put a lot of compost on the top so that there's a constant source of nutrition, because they'll turn yellow real fast. Same with citrus. You grow a citrus spot, you're fertilizing it every month of the year. In the ground you don't, but in pots you do. So, and again, you have to watch the heat. So we got Jan Boyce. Now I didn't mention a daughter of Hass is Don Gilligley. I spelled that wrong. G-I. So Don Gilligley, who lived in La Jolla, planted a hasp, and he got a tree in his yard that makes fruit like this. That's Don Gilligley. This is an interesting plant. We sell a lot of Don Gilligleys. The flavor is subtle. So when you first bite it, you don't notice much, but if you keep on chewing it, it gets better and better and better. So it's quite good. It's got the long skinny neck, small seed. But the most unique thing about Don Gilgley, 2 distinct crop cycles on a mature tree. So one of our customers first brought us Don Gilgley's about 6 or 7 years ago. He brought us fruit in April, and then he brought his second crop in August. And what we noticed in my daughter's tree, we had a Don Gilgley here for a while, and it just made the spring crop. And put in my daughter's yard, and after a few years, it bloomed in January, and it bloomed again in May. So it has 2 distinct crop cycles. The one in January, you can pick that in December and they're really good, or leave it on to April when they're at their best. And apparently the May crops may bloom. You can probably pick them in April or leave them on the tree till August when they're at their best. So you can get half a year out of a Don Gilgley tree. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And our tree made 20 fruit its second year. So it is a precocious tree also. So Don Gilgley, they're trying to shorten it to Gilgley, but the patent is under his name, Don Gilgley. And his original tree made it to about 14 foot. So it's not huge. So that's another real popular variety for us, a daughter of Hess. Now Esther, someone just asked about Esther. Esther is Hess cross Nabal. So it's a good heavy producer, precocious, but it's, I don't know, I didn't like the fruit. It's considered, so the book says it's excellent most years, but it has off taste some years. The year I grew the fruit, it had an off flavor. So I don't push Esther. Its heritage is interesting. It's got 2 good parents, but I don't know about that one. All right, let's go with the Mexican varieties. So Mexicola Grande. Stewart. Bacon. Now, none of these came from Mexico. They're all Mexican types that were discovered in California. I think they may all be B types. This is B. B. Oh, that's an A. Okay. So the one thing about Mexicola Grande and Stewart is they're only on the tree for 5 months before they're ripe. So really quick ripening, but that also means they're going to be small. They don't grow that big, so they grow about like that. Both these. Bacon starts ripening around November, but I would tell you it's not worth eating till January. So I would say January. But these late summer, let's say October is probably the best. October, November. But if it's a hot year, they can be ripe at the end of summer, so just a few months after the bloom. But they're all small. These 2 are small. This one's big. They're all supposed to be more cold hardy, so they can take it to the low 20s, although we don't worry about that here normally. But both Stewart and Mexicola Grande, the skin is about as thick as an apple skin, so it's very difficult to peel it. So they said just eat the skin, it adds flavor. So it gives it a licorice or anise flavor to the flesh. I mean, I grew Mexicolas back in the 80s. No way you can ever separate the skin off of them. But I struggle with the skin. Now you just eat the skin. The skin's so thin you don't notice it very much. On Mexicola and Stewart. So they handle the winter months better, or the fall, late fall and winter better than the other avocados do. And bacon, January, February, March is when it's at its best. The older books say October, but I would imagine if we had a real hot year, they'd ripen as early as October. But most years when we've tasted it, it wasn't worthwhile at all until January. And bacon, I don't know if the other two I haven't eaten lately. Bacon's got sugar content. Whenever I eat bacon, I go, this thing's sweet. So bacon is probably the sweetest avocado I've eaten. It doesn't have much oil in it, but I think it makes it up with the sugar. So it's still a good tasting avocado. You know, they don't rate it excellent, but it depends who's rating it, because people with bacon love the fruit. Jim Bacon, who developed that, also named one after his first name. So there's another close related plant called Jim, which I don't carry. Oh, another new one we got in is Helen. I believe Helen is Guatemalan, but it's a very large pear-shaped avocado. So bigger than Forte, really good flavor. We're going to try that out, see how we do with it. And there's only a few more that I didn't mention. So Holiday we're not carrying. We couldn't get it this year. Holiday is considered the shortest avocado tree, but it's also not small. So if you allow a Holiday to do its thing, it just kind of arches up and lays on the ground and grows 30 foot across. It's a vine. So if you want to get that off the ground, you got to put a good stake on it and leave it staked up for at least 6 or 10 years until it's thick enough, and then it's can actually make a tree out of it. It's not a very good producer. It makes really big avocados that are hard to tell when it's ripened. It's supposed to ripen the major holidays, which are 4th of July through January, but most people say it's best in the summer. It won't hang on the tree that long until the next January. So that's Holiday. And then the last one on here is Pinkerton. So Pinkerton's another one with a neck, fairly long neck. This is one I had trouble with. It blooms December, January, February, and it ripens in winter. It is really good tasting. Sometimes with the real necky avocados, the bottom ripens before the top. So that's the only negative thing you'd say about it. It'll be firmer on the neck than at the bottom. But Pinkerton's a good, my great uncle had a Pinkerton avocado. I remember he had lots of fruit hanging on that tree back in the 60s. So if we get the warm winters, Pinkerton does well. If we get frost in the winter, then it blanks on you. That's pretty much everything. Anybody have any questions? So I potted up all the avocados myself one by one. So they're getting ready one by one. So everything we planted in March is on the shelves. And I planted a whole bunch in April. So we'll have probably our best collection in April. I just finished planting the last ones this week from these little sleeves. So those will be ready probably next year, maybe. The last ones we have get burnt up in the little pots, so they're not worth very much at this point. Yes.
Gary, I have an extra in a 3.5 gallon container, 6 foot tall, and has fruit on it. If I transplant it now, would that cause the tree to drop the fruit?
Shouldn't. Should make it hold on better because you won't go through those wet dry cycles as much.
What can you do to prevent fruit dropping?
All we can do is don't fertilize and provide ample moisture. We can't control the weather or anything else, so that's all you can do. Don't fertilize it during the spring at all, and then make sure you got ample water.
A distance from a wall that you should plant an avocado.
That's going to be a good question. We're training them to be smaller trees, so I would be okay with 3 foot from the wall. But, if you don't do any trimming in 2 generations from now, it'll probably knock the wall over. So it just depends. I mean, it's just not like any other fruit tree. You don't have to let the avocados grow big. You just don't have to. You just keep them cut. And that'll keep everything about it smaller too. Don't let it get big.
Is there a preferred area to cut underneath or?
Well, the smaller the branch you cut, the less damage you do. So you stump it, you do more damage to the tree, which will shorten its life. But again, you know, we want to be able to harvest off it. So that's the main thing. So we have to do the damage. They'll live longer if we never cut them. But, you know, you just need to do it.